Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next lesson. Today's lesson or unit is extraordinarily long, so I'm going to try to cut it down to size in order to make it manageable so you can finish all of the the section. So we're going to deliberately skip a few because there's just too much here. And I don't want people to feel frustrated. We've got some perfectionists in the room. And if you don't finish everything, you feel guilty. And that is a curse sometimes. I think sometimes the better strategy is to not finish most things and focus on one or two that you really need to shore up. Shore up, S-H-O-R-E, up, is to improve, to get better. I need to shore that up before we move on. I need to shore up. So that is to improve. So for those of you who are perfectionists out there, I understand you, but sometimes we need to put that great quality aside for just a moment. Let's get started. And we're going to talk about, cats and dogs. What a lovely topic. I think we're going to find out because I was going to ask if you're a cat or a dog lover. I was about to say that perhaps everyone grew up with a cat or dog, but we're going to find out. Was there anyone here that actually didn't grow up with a cat or dog? You were that family in the block or in the neighborhood that had the snake or the chicken. Well, if you're on a farm, you have a chicken, I guess. Snake or hamster. My brother had both. Crazy. But we always had dogs. We were a dog family. There was no cat allowed near. The dogs wouldn't have it. So we were a dog family, but others are cats. And so we're going to find that out because the first question in the reading, we're not going to do the reading because there's entirely too much to do, as I mentioned. But the first question is sort of a speaking question. I'd like you to discuss that. Would you describe yourself as an animal lover? And if so, which type? That is a question I'd like all of you to take up in your moments during the speaking sessions, or especially with a speaking partner. Very important. And on that note, apropos, we're going to go ahead and I have our first homework is a speaking homework. And it's one that I want you to try to do first, or at least put the most importance on. Remember, this last month, I'm pushing you to speak more by making the first homework assignment a speaking assignment, which means obviously it's much easier to do it with a speaking partner. Now, I know some of you are reluctant or to coordinate or just are really busy. So you can, of course, speak to your phone, speak to the mirror, or speak to the hand. Now, that's an expression. I've made a pun there. Did you catch the pun? Talk to the hand, speak to the hand. That's when you don't want to hear someone speak anymore. Talk to my hand. I'm not listening anymore. This is quite rude, but I said it in jest to make a pun. All right. Now, what is this homework? It's a debate. It's a different type. It's a different genre than we've ever had. We're going to have a full-blown debate. It's obviously light-hearted. A light-hearted debate, I'm going to write this down because you might not use it much, even if you know what it means. A light-hearted debate is one that's not so serious, whereas medical debates, definitely, especially euthanasia, hope I spelled that right, it can be quite emotional. People can have very strong feelings if they're religious, if they're believing strongly in individual freedoms, whichever side you sort of hover around, then you can have very strong feelings. This, on the other hand, is a light-hearted debate meant to, of course, just spark conversation and, as you'll see, to introduce some new phrases and language. So I've given you the instructions. Find a speaking partner. Each person pick a side. So one of you will defend cats, one of you will defend dogs. Even if you're both cat or dog lovers, you're going to have to adopt, one of you is going to have to adopt the other position for the moment, for this debate. And debate the topic. Incorporate the words and phrases below that you don't normally use. And that's the key. How do you expand your active vocabulary? By using words you've never used. One small, uncomfortable grammar step at a time. That's how you improve at the highest levels. It's not easy anymore. You just say, okay, I'm going to learn inversions and I'm going to speak them. Every person I talk to, I'm going to use one inversion, even if they think I'm a little bit cuckoo. Doesn't matter. We want, well, you don't want to be too weird, but you want to improve. That's how you improve at the advanced level. One small step at a time. Focus on one little thing. You do that consistently, and you're up near fluency. And that is exciting. All right. And again, that deals with discipline, not language ability. Obviously, language ability carries you to the very highest levels, but your ability to plan, prepare, and organize yourself in these sorts of things, honestly, can make a big difference in your improvement, more so than your talent. Pay attention to the details. We're at the level now. I'm giving you, by the way, many of you are sending in voice messages. I'm giving you detailed feedback. I'm writing the errors and I'm giving you audio commentary on that. And you need to take these to heart. If you're not making a photo or downloading those errors and repeating them at least twice, you're not serious about improving. And I'm sorry to tell it to you so straight, but that's the truth. You made those mistakes in most cases because you've said them over and over. So the only way to undo them is to note them and repeat the right way several times. So if you just listen to my error corrections one time, unfortunately, we're probably both wasting our time. So if we've gone this far, take the extra 2 minutes and review them twice during the week, and then try to say them. On your way to work, in the car, just say all those corrections to yourself, or if you're in the metro or walking to work, just say them to yourself. That's how I did it. That's how I improved my English, actually. I copied down, my professor at Oxford wrote like Shakespeare in the 19th century. Shakespeare's older, but he wrote like Shakespeare in the 19th century. And I love this style of English. I just adore it. So you don't have to adore it. You have to adore what you adore. I adored this style of English, and I was determined to speak not exactly like that, but to write and use turns of phrases that you wouldn't normally find in the US or even in Britain in contemporary society, because I was using phrases that had sort of fallen into disuse, but I love them. And I wanted to use them in my writing especially. So you know what I did? I wrote down every sentence or every phrase or clause that I thought, oh my God, that's beautiful. And I could never do that on my own. And let me tell you, I had lists, I had pages. I'm not joking. I never told my professor this because it's quite embarrassing that an native speaker would be doing this, but that's how I did it. So I know that attention to detail and a passion for what you're doing is the key. I'm not talented, but if you have passion and discipline and you're organized, I think that's enough. I really do. So that's good news for those of you who think, oh my gosh, they're so talented. It doesn't matter. Focus on yourself, on the details, and learning step by step. And you know what? If you focus on the things you really you really want to improve, this process is like going on holiday. It really is. I remember walking to the library in Oxford, reading these sentences. I had them written down. I still have them photographed. I can even show you one day. And I was just reading them, and I just thought, wow, that's so beautiful. Anyway, here we go. These are not Shakespeare-like below. I want to just warn you. These are just common debate phrases that you can use. Now, I've divided them, I think very helpfully, into two groups. These are the ones, the intermediate ones, are the ones we normally use, and you obviously want to use them. Now, let me say intermediate. Intermediate doesn't mean they're less good. They're poorer than the advanced. No, it doesn't mean that. It means that the advanced are less used, but these are also, I use all of these 1 to 5. And number 5 is actually quite eloquent. It is often said that cats, that's quite an eloquent statement, actually, probably past intermediate. But here we have, it's a bit more complex, and it sort of involves a deeper level of thought, I think, in most cases. So give these a perusing. A perusing is a read through, quick read through. I'll write that word down, perusing. To peruse is the word, the verb, peruse. So peruse these, quickly read, and determine which one you like. You don't have to do all of them. Find 2 that you go, wow, I like those, and just worry about those 2. And so, yeah, and maybe you already use some of these. I know some of you already do. If you actively use it, it's not the question of, have you heard of it before? Most of you have heard of all of these. The question is different. Have you used these? Have you spoken these or written these yourself? If you haven't, then that's your opportunity to learn. All right, and then what I've added is a handy specialized vocabulary. This is cat and dog vocabulary. And I have to say, I haven't used some of these words. I'm going to be honest. A clouder of cats, I didn't know that until I started to research this for this this page, because I knew I wanted to do this. So I've never used clouder. Aloe grooming, I've only heard, I've never used it. Keep in mind, I've never had a cat. So I have a defense, I have an alibi. An alibi is a good excuse. So retractable clause, these sorts of things. This is really interesting. So as you're having this debate, maybe go through a few of these. The whiskers, you probably know that. Feline pronunciation, it's called feline. And then we have canine, that's pertaining to dogs. Barking, obviously we know. Heel, you might not know. We all have heels at the bottom of our foot. This part is the heel of our foot. But heel to a dog, when you say to the dog heel, it means something very different. A kennel, the house or shelter. Boarding is where they sleep, live. All right, so you have these sorts of terms that you can utilize during your debate. And I'd like to get some feedback on how interesting that debate was. All right, we're going to move now to vocabulary. Again, there's a lot here. So we're going to go to B, 171, Animal Matters. I guarantee you there's a lot new here. So go through it. Some of these are really common. Some of these you won't use much. But honestly, what I love about the book, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, they choose difficult words that you actually use. So I can say that all of these are used. It's not like you're not using them. This isn't for trivia. This is for a detailed knowledge that you might actually need in the future. Great speaking partner questions or discussion during the week. We're going to have those. Now, I'm going to go through these. Again, there's just so much here. I think it'll take you a very long time if I don't help you in the video. So I thought I would. Honestly, the only one, so I went through these 1 to 10 and I asked myself, all right, which of these do I use? And I use all but number 1. All but number 1. That means they are common because I'm a common person. And if I'm a common person speaking in the language and I hear it, then it's probably used rather frequently. So the 2 to 10, I would say, are very interesting. I noted number 5, especially because honestly, the book uses it in a context I've never used it before. I think it's a poor example. So I'm going to give you my own example. So number 5, a dark horse is a team. Let me tell you what it's not normally used as. Not here. He's a bit of a dark horse. I've never heard that. So we're going to forget that one because no one that says that. We're going to use the one that when you're watching sports and there are 2 teams and or in any sort of league, and you have a team that's slowly moving up the ranks, they're getting better and better. They're the dark horse. The dark horse is the one everyone overlooked, no one expected to win. They're the underdog. And a dark horse is someone who comes out on top when they weren't expected to. And so that's more of the dark horse. So it's the context is sports. It's a dark horse. And I think it probably came from horse racing. And you know, a dark horse was someone who was not favored to win, and they ended up winning. So they came out of the dark because no one focused on them. There was no light shining on them, and they ended up winning. So all sports, if there's a dark horse in the tournament, it's the team that no one is talking about, but they come out on top later. All right. Everything else I think is pretty standard and very common. I don't know maybe I'll give you a few. It's like water off a duck's back. If water goes on a duck's back, it just sort of reflects off very quickly. It doesn't soak in, so it doesn't affect you. Water doesn't affect the duck because it's in the water a lot. So it's like water off a duck's back. You don't care. It doesn't. The criticism doesn't bother me. Whatever. It's okay. Let's go on. Let's move on. Water off a duck's back. He was like, here's another water term or metaphor. He was like a fish out of water. I'm guessing many of you have heard of this one. If you're a fish out of water, you've seen fish flop when they're out of water in a boat. If you've done any fishing or seen fishing, you get the fish in the boat and it starts to flop around. It's very uncomfortable and will not survive very long. And so if you're like a fish out of water in any particular situation, you're very uncomfortable. Oh, this is one we used a lot growing up. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. Now, chickens hatch. The egg breaks and they hatch. That's what babies are born and chickens hatch. And we say, don't count your chickens before they hatch. In other words, don't assume, what's it say here? Don't be too confident that you'll be successful. Don't assume the outcome until it's actually happened. I hear so many people counting their chickens before they hatch. Yeah, I'm sure we're going to get the contract. Well, they haven't signed the contract yet, so there's no guarantee you're going to get it. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. Wait until the contract's signed, and then you can brag or boast about the contract. All right. Nick's wife's got the lion's share. That's the main part. Lions, of course, are the king of the jungle, the kings of the jungle. So the lion's share is obviously going to be the bigger part, because if you watch any sort of animal movie, Animal Kingdom, you know that when the lion comes, it takes whatever it wants, and it generally takes most of it. They get the lion's share. So if someone dies, there's an inheritance. They got the lion's share, and these other people got a very small portion. I smell a rat. This is not good. If you smell a rat, you're talking to someone that you probably don't trust very much. You probably shouldn't deal with very much. I smell a rat. Something's not right with this person. Be careful. We know this one, but you might use it differently. And this brings us to the question below. Which idioms are similar in your language? I know a lot of you have this in your language. It'll kill to kill two birds with one stone. Now, you shouldn't kill any birds with any stones, but we can do it metaphorically. And we can do that by doing two tasks, accomplishing two tasks with one action. That's kind of cool. So we're being efficient. That's being efficient, killing two birds with one stone. What do you say in your language? I know a lot of you have this, but it's slightly different. And I think it'd be really fun during your speaking group or your either with a speaking partner in the conversation to talk about how it's slightly different in your language. And the reason it's interesting, well, it's interesting because it just is interesting. And people go, wow, so you use a boulder or you use a spear or something. And the other reason it's interesting is because it helps you to remember the English version, because you have a comparison in your mind. We call this the swoosh effect. The swoosh effect is when you sort of compare and mix and associate, you remember it a lot longer. All right. Her bark is worse than her bite. Barking is worse than the biting. Some dogs sound very ferocious. Ferocious is a very big adjective. Ferocious. Some dogs sound very ferocious, very mean, but in fact, they wouldn't hurt anyone. We say they wouldn't hurt a flea. They wouldn't hurt a flea. Fleas are these very, very small insects that actually live on dogs, ironically. He wouldn't hurt a flea. Fleas live on dogs, and that dog wouldn't even hurt the flea that lives on him. All right. Hopefully your dog doesn't have fleas. This is not very nice. You've got to go to the veterinarian, the vet, if they do, or get sprayed or washed, special wash. All right. He walked off with his head between his legs. Oh, sorry, with his tail between his legs. If you walk off with your tail between your legs, you are ashamed. You've probably lost in a pretty embarrassing way. All right, we have a lot here. And let's see. Pronunciation. Oh, we've got the grammar here. That's right. We're going to go to the grammar part. Ellipses. All right. Ellipses are very interesting because, and I want to just say something about ellipses. If I could say one thing about there's one use of ellipses, or one time when a lot of you don't use it when you should, is with the use of one, O-N-E, one. A lot of people say, I live in a small one. So my city is not so big, I live in a small one. We never say that, one. And that's where we can use these ellipses. My town is rather small, but we never say small one, or this use of one, O-N-E. If you're using it, I want you to remember that and ask if it's appropriate. I'm going to say half the time it's not. It's a signal that you're not a native, because we don't use one so often, as many of you do. So that's just an observation on ellipses, which is this idea of removing words because it's implied or understood when you're speaking. So for example, he fed the dog and went to work. Now, this is an example of a compound, a shared subject, he and he. So you just use one subject and you have a compound verb. He fed and he went. He fed and he went. So he fed the dog and went to work. We don't need to repeat he. She came to the meeting but didn't say anything. We don't need to repeat she, excuse me. We should phone him or send him. So we should phone, we should send. That is the compound noun that's being used implicitly in both sections or clauses. We usually have dinner at 10, and then we usually watch TV, but we don't have to say usually. We can just say then watch TV, because we're sharing it. However, there are 4 or 5, I think 5 here, words that you have to repeat the noun. Before, after, because, when, and while, and here they are right here. So let's read them. They locked the doors and windows before they left. You can't say before left. Very awkward in English. We'll have a look at the photos after we finish dinner. He's stressed because he has too much work. She was horrified when she saw the mess he had left. And finally, I met Sean while he was working in Italy. So we have to repeat it when it follows these different words. All right, pronouns. Actually, not pronouns, words. So this is, I think, a very important one. Now, a lot of you do this instinctively. So if you do this instinctively, and many of you do, then move on. You don't have to worry about it. But Laura has never been to the States, but her sister has. Stop. If you say, but her sister has been, we don't say that normally, unless you have a specific reason for doing so, maybe to emphasize it. But her sister has been. We don't say it, but her sister has. That's what we say. Gary thinks he's right, but he isn't. We don't say he isn't right. I think a lot of you do this instinctively. I haven't noticed, except with the word one, I haven't noticed it very often. I thought I would be able to come tonight, but in fact, I can't. So here we have a different one. We have can't and would be able, but we're able to use it because it shares come tonight, but I can't come tonight. I know you've never learned to drive, but I think you should have learned to drive. We would never repeat it. It sounds very odd in English to repeat it. All right. And here we have the rest. You can go ahead and read through these. This is another one I think really helpful. I'll have finished the work by Friday, or at least I hope so. Will you be working on Saturday? I suppose so. If you say so. Do you think it'll rain tonight? I hope not. I hope it won't rain tonight. I hope not. She's not very likely to pass, is she? I'm afraid she's not very likely to pass. No, we don't say that. I'm afraid not. The children may be back, but I don't think they will be back. That would be very strange. The children may be back, but I don't think so. I don't think they're back yet. All right. Hope so means I hope I will have finished the work by Friday. So you can, these are an explanation of the homework, and you've got that homework to do. So let's go ahead, and now we're going to move down. Actually, we're not going to do lesson 6 because it's just too much. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back, and I'm going to leave it. You've got pronunciation and some listening here. And this is all done with the audio file. And I'm going to let you do it. So these are going to be self-explanatory. I'm not going to list all the audio files because it's just too much work, and I don't want people to get frustrated that you didn't finish it. It's just too much. I don't think all of it's necessary. So with that, I'm going to wish you well. Happy studying, and see you soon. Bye-bye.